I've been collecting books for this book haul for so long now, I've forgotten what I've bought because they're not on my shelves yet. Hello, it's Jade, and today I'm going to do yet another book haul because I can't seem to stop myself. So I have been collecting books over the past, I don't know how long it's been since this book haul and my last book haul, but I've been waiting for my next box of stories delivery, and that arrived yesterday, so I thought, finally I can get these books off my floor and onto my shelves. As usual, it's a mixture of books from charity shops, books from World of Books. I got some from my friend who moved to another country and didn't want to take all of her books with her. And then I have my 4 mystery books from the box of stories. So we will start with the ones I got from the charity shop, I guess. So the first book I picked up was We Need to Talk About Kevin. I have seen the movie of this and I've wanted to read the book since watching the movie. I didn't realise it was quite so big. For some reason I thought this was quite a short book, but clearly not. So We Need to Talk About Kevin is a story of... It's mostly the story of a mother who becomes... Well, she becomes a mother by giving birth to this little boy, and then later a little girl, I believe. But before becoming pregnant with her son, she never really wanted children, and as her son is growing, she's becoming more and more disconnected with him, and she's convinced that he's evil, there's something wrong with him, but no one else seems to see it. So every time she wants to talk to someone about Kevin, they're just like, he's just a little boy, he's just a sweet little boy, there's nothing wrong with him. And then, I don't know, spoiler alert maybe, for those who don't know how this book ends, is that, I'm just going to say, he does something atrocious, and the entire thing is almost like an allegory on, the way American culture nurtures male violence in children and school shootings and stuff like that. Next, there is clearly someone in my village that is going through all of the Disney Twisted Tales, which is good for me because I keep finding them in the charity shop. So I picked up Straight On Till Morning, which is the Peter Pan one, and this one poses the question, what if Wendy went to Neverland with Captain Hook? Now, next to Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan is one of my favourite kids' stories to have retellings of, and I haven't read nearly as many Peter Pan retellings, but I'm very excited for that one, and that means I now have 3 Disney Twisted Tales, and I've read none of them. So I don't even know if these are well written or not. So next, I was really excited to find this in my charity shop because if you've seen some of my other videos, I absolutely love Becky Chambers, and I found To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers, which I think is one of her earliest books. It's very small, but she is a sci-fi writer. She wrote one of my favourite sci-fi series, which is the Wayfarers series, and all of her sci-fi is incredibly character-driven. And this seems like it's going to be no different. The plot, as much as there is a plot in a Becky Chambers book, there always is a running narrative, but it is more about the characters that she creates. The plot in this is that at some point in the future, humans have discovered a way to almost do faster than light travel, but the way they do this without the human body breaking down is to take biologically altering substances. So it's following a character called Ariadne, who is on a ship to go to 4 different planets, ecosystems, to find out if they're habitable or not. And her crewmates are sleeping in cryosleep between these, and every time they wake up they have different features and they look different, and I imagine the whole thing is probably going to be focusing on how that would affect you mentally and your relationships with other people because of maybe ingrained prejudices or just not being comfortable in the body that you've then woken up in maybe. But I'm excited for that one, very, very much so. Next, I have been looking for a nice copy of Sense and Sensibility for so long. I keep finding them in charity shops, as in just copies of Sense and Sensibility, because you always find classics in charity shops. but they've never had covers that have been particularly appealing to me. And however, I've picked up this Collins Classic version, which I actually really like. I don't really own many Collins Classics. I did have the Little Women one, but I unhauled that because it was only the first book and I thought it was the whole thing. Then I picked up Here the Whole Time by Vitor Martins. This is a young adult LGBT romance book, following, what's his name, Philippe, who is a young, I think he's an out gay boy, but he has a crush on this boy called Kaio, but he's convinced that that boy is not going to like him back because he is overweight. So I'm hoping that this is going to be like a body positive, like queer love story, and that's what I'm going in hoping for this. I've never read anything by Vitor Martins, but it's also just a lovely, bright and pretty cover, so I have high hopes for this one. Then I picked up The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. This is another sci-fi, and follows the story of Romy, who is the only survivor on a spaceship, and so she is literally the loneliest girl in the universe because there is no one there, until she hears that Earth has sent a second spaceship to like come and get her, with only one passenger on it called Jay, and they start talking to each other via emails, but because of the space difference it takes months for these emails to reach each other. But even so, she finds herself falling in love with this person. And yeah, I don't know if it is written mostly like through emails, but it seems like it's just going to be like a sci-fi romance. Yeah, as someone who is not particularly well versed in romances and has picked up two. I mean, I guess you can call wow, I think I just had a mini stroke. I think you could call Sense and Sensibility a romance, but that's the only kind of romances I've ever read have been period romances written by Jane Austen. So the last one I got from the charity shop is Birdsong by Sebastian Faulks. This is a World War II... No! Okay. This is a World War I, like, epic, and it follows, I think, one person, Stephen, yes, who joins the Great War as a soldier, and it cuts between his experiences in the trenches and on the battlefield and his like battles at home and just like the things he's going through when he, like, I think before he left for the war. But I don't actually know all that much about this. This is one of those that's been on my like list of 100 classic books to read type thing, and I saw it and it was like 50p, so I thought I'd pick it up. But now I'm going to talk about the books that my friend gave me before she moved. They are all Trudy Canavan books because she sent like photos to our group chat and was like, these are all the books I'm leaving, does anyone want anything? And I said, I want to read some Trudy Canavan, so she gave me all of them. And I'm not going to talk about each one because most of them are in a series. So, she gave me the first three, or is it a trilogy, so it's the only three, in The Age of the Five, which is Priestess of White, Last of the Wilds, and Voice of the Gods. Trudy Canavan is like well, she's a fantasy writer, so I don't know anything about these stories other than the fact that I wanted to read a Trudy Canavan book, and now I have like 10 of them. Okay, she also gave me all of the books in... She gave me all of the books in the Traitor's Spy, or Traitor Spy trilogy, which is The Ambassador's Mission, The Rogue, and The Traitor Queen, as well as a book that I actually already have a copy of, The Magician's Apprentice, which I have. I have a very diddy version of it. So, because this one is the same size as the other hardbacks, I'll probably keep this one and then unhaul this one. So yeah, I didn't want to spend too much time talking about those because I don't actually know what they're about. And then the books that I bought from World of Books. This is actually these are the biggest piles because every time I go onto World of Books and want to buy like something that's a sequel to a series that I'm reading, a bunch of the other things that are on my wish list are always on sale, and it's like 3 for 2, so I never leave that website having only bought one book because I have no self-control. I bought Rivers of London by Ben Aronovich. I did have this as an audiobook from my library, but for some reason the day that I should have been allowed to download it, it never became downloadable, and then it wouldn't let me download it, so that was, I don't know what happened there, so I thought, you know, I'm just going to buy a physical copy. From what I know, this is a recommendation from my sister, so I'm hoping I enjoy it, although her last recommendation to me didn't work out very well. That this is like a magical crime novel set in like the London Underground in like Victorian times? Oh no, it says modern London. Anyway, but I've only heard people saying good things about this. People have said, like, I think the further the series goes on, the more people are split in terms of whether they like it or not, but I think most people agree that the first book is very good, so I haven't bought any more than the first one because I've never read any of his work before. I then bought The 57 Bus, which is a non-fiction memoir, and it's all about these two like secondary school kids, Richard and Sasha, who like I think they're from the same school, but they're both on the 57 bus, and I believe Richard takes a lighter and sets light to Sasha's skirt, and it's all about the aftermath of that one cruel act, and there's a whole like race and transgender discrimination issue in this as well. So it's very, the blurb is not very descriptive, and everyone who's ever talked to me about this book has not been very descriptive about what it is about, so I'm assuming that means that it's one of those that you can't really talk about without ruining the entire thing. So I figured, you know what, just buy it and read it. And the next is another Lisa Jewell book. I bought The Girls, which is once again another domestic thriller because she's very good at that. About, I think, a suburban street / town. And at the back it just says, "You've known your neighbours for years and you trust them implicitly. You think that your children are safe, but are they really? Midsummer night and a girl is found unconscious in a dark corner of the garden. What happened to her and who is responsible?" So yeah, it's about a row of houses that has a communal garden in the centre. This is like quite a common thing in London. A lot of boroughs will have houses like in a square and then a big communal garden that only the people that live there can go into. So that sounds interesting. And the next one I bought was Goldilocks by Laura Lamb. This is another sci-fi, and it's set in a future where women's freedoms are being more and more restricted. We're like going backwards, basically. But despite that, the main character, Valerie Black, is heading up the first all-female space crew to a planet in the Goldilocks zone, which is a zone that is perfect for human habitation. So, to like, you know, start another colony. But on this trip, things in the spaceship start going wrong, and it's trying to unravel if this is just bad luck or if there is someone actively sabotaging their trip. Yeah. As someone who, before this year, I was like, I don't think I'd ever really read sci-fi. I was always like very fantasy focused. I've read an awful lot of sci-fi this year, and it is fast becoming one of my favourite genres, I have to say. After that, I bought Steeplejack by A.J. Hartley, which also just amazing cover. This is a kind of steampunky fantasy following, what is the main character's name? Anglet. She is a steeplejack. She repairs chimneys and rooftops, and as part of this job she gets to see the different, you know, facets of her city, because she's always like above it and looking down and everything. And on the day she's set to meet her new apprentice, she finds him dead. And also on that day, the city's prize artifact is stolen. And so everyone cares more about this like stolen artifact than the fact that this boy that was supposed to be her apprentice is dead. And it's a story of her trying to figure out if it was an accident, if he was murdered, if his murder and this missing artifact are somehow connected. So it seems like it's like a steampunky mystery, and didn't know Richard and Judy still had their book club going, but according to this sticker, they do. That didn't come off completely. All of the sticky is still on the book. Haha. This one I'm super excited about, and I don't know why it took me so long to pick it up, because this has been on my TBR for so long. But I picked up Vox by Christina Dolce. This is a dystopian, almost in the vein of like Handmaid's Tale, where it's set in a future where women have been limited to 100 words per day, and if they go above that 100 words, they get like a severe electric shock. I don't know if it's a deadly 1,000 volts of electricity. Yes, deadly electric shock. So I'm assuming that it's in a similar vein of The Handmaid's Tale. It is like trying to fight against a new oppressive regime, and you're following the story of these women that have now been silenced and how they're trying to overcome that. I'm also interested to learn how it's written in the... Oh, that's cute. If it is written in sort of like 100-word slices. And this, as this is a second-hand book, I've just found an adorable little bookmark in the shape of a letter. Oh, that's what I love about buying second-hand books, is you sometimes find these little things. Then I bought an incredibly short book called Address Unknown. This is, I believe it's a non-fiction. No, it's not. It's not non-fiction at all. But this is, Address Unknown is a series of letters written between a Jewish man and his German pen friend right at the start of Hitler's regime. And it's apparently, as you read, you can see like the radicalization of this man's German friend, and how does their friendship sustain itself when they're being pitched against each other as enemies. And as soon as I heard that it like described to me, I was like, I need this book so badly. And it's, I mean, I imagine that is like a half a day's worth of reading. But I also decided to complete a bunch of series that for some reason I didn't have the full ones of. So if you remember in my, I believe it was my September wrap, or it might have been my August wrap up. I don't know, but I read the book Starters by Lisa Price, and I enjoyed it so much that I bought the second one, because this is a two-parter, and this one is Enders. So Starters is a young adult dystopian set in a universe where a disease eradicated everyone basically from the age of 20 to 61 or something, because everyone below that age and above that age were inoculated first because they were the vulnerable ones, and yet the country didn't have enough time to inoculate everyone else, so they all died. And you now have like a segregated society of starters, who are the younger people, and enders, who are the older people. This is also a future in which people oftentimes will live to about 200 years old because of the advance in medicine and all of that stuff. And in this world, a corporation has started that allows enders to rent the bodies of young people or starters for a limited amount of time and have their thoughts placed into this young body so that they can do things that their aging bodies can no longer do. So they can, you know, go partying, go skydiving, do horse riding, things that they used to enjoy doing that they can't physically do anymore. and the main character, Callie, in starters, goes and rents herself out to this corporation in an attempt to get some money to buy medicine for her younger brother. And it's that during her like second rental period or something, she wakes up midway through and has to find out what the hell has gone wrong, and also the shady double dealings that are going on in this already quite shady company. And it ended on quite a cliffhanger, which is why I was like, I need the second one. The only thing I am annoyed about is that this book is like height-wise about half the size of the first one. And as I said in my Darren Shanathon video, can we stop doing that? Publishers, please? If you're going to produce a paperback, make them the same size. Sorry. Mini rant over. Again. The next series that I completed was the Shadow and Bone series. I can't remember which one is first. This is the second one. Yeah, also, can we start again, if we're having series, can we start putting numbers on them so I know which one is which? Anyway, the second one, Siege and Storm, and the third one, Ruin and Rising. I am also going to have to buy the Six of Crows duology. Basically every other Grishaverse book, I think, after reading Shadow and Bone, because I was like, oh my god, this is the young adult fantasy that I live for. And then I completed a series that is very dear to my heart, but for some reason I missed the last two that were being published. Probably because when I started reading this series, it was a trilogy. And then I was halfway through the third book thinking, how the hell is she going to wrap this up in like 50 more pages? And then I got to the end and there was a thing saying, yes, this is now a 5-part series, or going to be. And I was like, god damn it. So I bought the last two in the Great Library series, which is Smoke and Iron and Sword and Pen. The first book in this series, Ink and Bone, and just the series in general. The series in general is based in a different version of Victorian London where the Library of Alexandria was never destroyed and is now the centre of all knowledge. Every library in the world is just like a little offshoot of the Library of Alexandria. So the main powerhouse of the world is Egypt, and Alexandria is where scholars go to learn their craft and stuff like that. But as well as not losing this massive fountain of knowledge, the Library of Alexandria has complete control over who gets knowledge and who doesn't. Reading is basically sort of outlawed, and physical books are incredibly hard to get your hands on, like physical books like this. And yeah, I don't really want to go much more into it without spoiling the series, and I'm going to reread from start to finish because it's been a while since I started it. But it's so steampunk and so just it's like a mixture between steampunk and like Indiana Jones mixed with just some like high fantasy, because there is a magical element to it as well, but there's also the technology aspect, and just the concept is just so good. And also I didn't realise when I then bought this next book that they're written by the same author. So I also bought Stillhouse Lake by Rachel Kane, which is a domestic thriller, and following the story of Gina, who basically goes into, I think it's like witness protection. Yes. Who sort of goes into witness protection after her husband is discovered to be a serial killer. And he is put in prison, but the reason that her and her children have to leave is that not everyone believes that she's completely innocent of what her husband did, that she didn't have anything to do with it, she didn't know he was a serial killer, so they escape to Stillhouse Lake, and yet they're still like pursued by stalkers. And I've heard this is like a very tense domestic thriller. There's a lot of like looking over your shoulder and everything, I've also heard that I should not read the other ones in this series, so if people have read this, did you enjoy the next couple, or should I just stick to just Stillhouse Lake and not go beyond that? Let me know. After that, I bought a short story collection called The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. I bought this after I believe it was Noelle spoke about it. This is each short story in this follows a different woman, and I think they are literally only a couple of pages each. But one, I absolutely adore this cover so much, and yeah, and it's each following a different woman, and I think they all go to the same church, and it's all about their different lives and everything. So I'm excited to read it. I picked up Bunny by Maura Awad. This is set in Warren University, and it follows a woman called Samantha who, when she joins this university, she is, I think, like, brought into this clique of girls who call themselves bunnies. And I think there is like a cult element to this as well, and I've heard that it's like super twisted, and I like the fact that I go into a lot of thrillers not knowing like anything about the plot, because it's hard to describe a thriller plot without giving things away that you don't want to know. But I'm excited for that. I keep saying that, I'm excited for everything. Oh yeah, and this is another series, like, not completion because I doubt this is a 2-book series, but I don't know when the next one is coming out. I got the second book in the Aurora Cycle. This is Aurora Burning, and Aurora Rising, which was awesome, I read that last month, is the story of a group of cadets who are complete misfits. They were like the last ones to be picked, and they've got to come together and basically stop the end of the universe whilst not being each other's first pick for like teammates at all. And I mean, there were certain issues that the more I'm stewing on it, the more I'm thinking, actually I didn't particularly like that much. There's like a whole soulmate subplot that made me feel a bit icky. I don't really like the whole destined lovers trope, because it takes away an aspect of free will that I don't think should ever be taken away in like a romantic relationship. But I'm hoping that's not like too much of a focus. Yes, looking at you. But so this is following obviously on from the end of that one. I then bought a memoir called All the Young Men by Ruth Coker Burks. This is Ruth's memoir about being one of the only women during the AIDS crisis who would comfort these young gay men dying from AIDS, because there's a lot of misinformation, obviously homophobia and just prejudice against this disease and the people who were afflicted by it, and a lot of people just wouldn't touch them or look after them. And also a lot of these young men probably didn't have a lot of, I'm going to say blood family, because found family in the queer community is a big thing. But this is the story of Ruth, who goes from sort of being, she just was in this hospital visiting her son, I believe. No, she's just visiting a friend, actually. And as she's visiting this friend, she finds a door that's been painted red, and hears the man inside, like, crying for his mother. And she goes in and comforts him, and then word spreads that there's this woman that is, like, willing to touch these men and hug them and look after them. And it's her journey into, like, becoming an activist without even really meaning to, just through her, like, compassion. And I imagine that this is going to be a bit of a heartbreaking read, but also a very important one. You know when you sat with your legs crossed for too long and one foot just goes completely numb? I'm currently dealing with that. But we've only got 3 more books to go, so no. 3 more books that I know about, and then the 4 mysteries. But the next one I got was Dreadnation by Justina Ireland. Another amazing cover. And also it's like got weird edging. That it feels like very Pulp Fiction-y, in that it's very rough. But that's beside the point. This is a zombie book set during the War of Independence in America. And so, like, in the middle of the Civil War, the dead start to rise. And so the war kind of has to a little bit be put on hold. But as far as the story of Jane McKinney, who was born 2 days before this started happening, and as a woman of colour, she is put into a school with other black children and also Native American children who now have to train to fight the dead, because obviously during this time slavery is still a thing and they're still seen as like subhuman, so they're just being used as bodies to fight this like new terror that has arisen. And I think during this there is also like a mystery of people have started to go missing, and so Jane is like torn between she's now a trained fighter against the dead, but also people in her hometown have gone missing. She wants to find out what's going on with them. And yeah, everything about that screams that this would be something that I'm going to really enjoy. I then got 9 Perfect Strangers by Liane Moriarty. I've never read Liane Moriarty, and I'm not entirely sure why this was the first one that I picked up. I think it was just one of the ones that was on sale. I know that there is also a Netflix adaptation of... Is it a Netflix adaptation of this? There is an adaptation of this coming out, if it's not already out. But this, I think, is a cult book again? Anyway, it's about 9 perfect strangers who all go to a like health retreat, and then things start to go wrong. Like, this is not really a health retreat where you're just going to go and get massages and stuff. I think it's a health retreat where you go and you are forced to confront either your worst fears or the things you've done wrong in your life. And I imagine that they are all connected somehow, but I don't know how. I mean, I've heard good things about Liane Moriarty. If there are other books of hers that you think are like better than this one, or that I should read, not instead of this because I own this now, so I'm going to read it, but like other Liane Moriarty books that you think I would enjoy, then please leave them in the comments below. And after reading this, if I like her writing, I will definitely check them out. And the last book I got from World of Books is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. But yeah, this is about a group of 4 retirees who meet up every week to... I don't know if it's to discuss murder or if it's to discuss like murder books. I think they get together and they're like an amateur sleuth team that like to talk about cold cases that have happened, and then during one of their meetings a murder happens and they're like, they actually have to now try and solve a real life murder that is happening like right in front of them. Not necessarily right in front of them, because that would be really easy to solve because you'd be watching the killer kill them. But this also has a sequel now, I think, so I'm late to the party in that I haven't read this yet. And now we are on to my box of stories books, and I love this like autumnal little postcard that came with it. So the first one, and I have had like a brief, because I unboxed the box. I've had a brief read of the backs of these. So the first one was All the Beautiful Lies by Peter Swanson. This one is a domestic thriller where it's the protagonist Harry, who comes home on like the eve of his college graduation to find his dad has died. And he's now having to try and figure out if the death was accidental or if his stepmother Alice had something to do with it, and why is she suddenly being so like not compassionate, but she's being a bit cloying and a bit trying to get too close to him. And is this like just a trauma response, or is there something like a bit nasty underlining this? Is she responsible for his death? So I mean, that's like the 3rd or 4th domestic thriller that is on this pile now. And we have The Last Ballad by Wiley Cash. This one is set in North Carolina at some point in the past. There's no year on this. But it follows the story of Ella, who is trying to feed her children after her husband has run off, and she works the night shift at a wool mill. It just says mill, so I don't know what type of mill it is. And as she's working, she finds like a union leaflet, and she starts to believe, like, she joins the union and she's hoping that will, like, the union will help her get more rights and better pay and all that stuff. But at the same time, the mill owners are like very against the union, fucking shocking, and and are doing everything they can to stop like a union forming within their mill and everything like that. And I'm excited to read a book like this, because I know that, I mean, most of my, you know, union history and all that stuff is English based, because that's where I live and where I grew up. So, and I know that attitudes towards unionism and just socialism in general in America are very different to here. Not so much now that we've had a Tory government for so long, but that's another conversation entirely. The third book from my mystery box was The Last Place You Look by Christian Lepionka. This looks, just from the front, like another thriller. So, and there's nothing on the back. Ah, it's a missing girl book. Okay. Oh, yeah, no, yes. So, this is about, so it's a girl called Sarah went missing 15 years ago, the same night that her parents were killed. And her boyfriend, who happens to be black, is framed for the murder and is put on death row. But his sister is convinced that he's innocent, and 15 years later she also believes she sees Sarah at a gas station. So she's like, well, clearly she's not dead, she just like disappeared. So she hires a PI called Roxanne to reopen this cold case and try and get her brother exonerated before he's killed. And that actually sounds really interesting. And the last book, which just from the cover you would imagine would be like a summer romance, but it's not, is called The Summer Villa by Melissa Hill. All of these are like thrillers, I've just realised. Apart from the Last Ballad, but I don't know, that could also end up being a thriller. This one is 4 friends go on holiday together one summer, and they stay in this lovely villa called Villa Dolce Vita. And one of them doesn't leave, not for any reason. She stays in that villa and she decides that she's going to revamp it and restore it. That's the actual word I was looking for, not revamp. She's going to restore the villa, and then a couple of years later she invites those same friends back again to this villa so that they can like relive that summer. But as they're there, like, secrets and things start to come out of the woodworks, and I think they found out maybe it wasn't as idyllic as they remembered it. So that's another like domestic thriller. And that is my big stack of books. I don't know how many it was, but yes, I'm trying now to, I keep saying this, to like do fewer book hauls, but I think it would be a good idea to time them with my mystery books. So that would be like once every 3 months. But anyway, have any of you read the books that are on this list? Did you enjoy them? Did you hate them? Are there any other books that you think I should read based on the things that I bought? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.